but I do remember like almost every year being like, why am I getting in trouble so much? Like, like I feel like I'm just chilling, but I am constantly in the principal's office for just the same shit my friends are doing, and they're not here. Don't you forget about me. Don't. Welcome to episode 20 of the Creme World podcast. Guess who it is? It's your host, Creme Brulee, coming to you from my house. Today's date is Sunday, March 15th. You're listening to this on Monday, March 16th, or a later date in the future. You already know that. Welcome to the show. Thank you for listening. Thank you for clicking the button on your phone or for letting it roll in. If it's just rolling in, hey, just let it rock. If you haven't had a chance to change the podcast yet, you're listening to, give me a chance, man. And if you clicked on this on purpose, you've done it. You've already experienced the joy. You know what I mean? Like, the joy is coming through me talking, but also once you hit the button, it's like, you know, sometimes if you like, I don't drink anymore, but like sometimes when you like get off work and you order a drink, before you even get the drink, once you've ordered the drink, you're already in bliss, right? Just thinking about the first joint I'm going to smoke after just rolling the joint, I already feel, you know what I mean? So let the knowledge that you're going to be imbued with joy, imbue this moment with joy. I am here to deliver that joy. You can call me Dr. Joy, and my office hours are now. I'm taking new clients. I am not certified. But come, I do BBLs. I'll get you some veneers. And I also do colonoscopies. Again, I'm not certified. I cannot stress that enough. Please, however, like this show on whatever you're listening to. If that's on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever, take a moment to like it, subscribe, leave a comment saying that you like it, review it, rate it. All those nice things really do matter. At least I've been programmed to say as much by other shows and people online who give advice for growing your own podcast. We got fun stuff to talk about today. We're going to talk, it's going to be not a lot about Jack Harlow, but we're talking about Jack Harlow, and I'm using that as an excuse to do some exposition. And then I'm going to have some last thoughts on Love is Blind. And if we get to it, I will give you my Mount Rushmore of Disney Channel celebrities, characters, figures, because That's So Raven dropped their Mount Rushmore and people are talking about it. There's no Miley. No Hannah Montana. Come on now. Before we start, it's a fun thing doing a podcast where it's like just your interests, and basically through the metrics I receive or you receive, or whoever, you basically get to figure out which things you talk about your quote unquote audience or people who listen to you also care about. So I've gotten the harsh reality about what things I talk about that people do and don't care about based on the data, and sometimes it's soul crushing. And sometimes, okay, so last week I talked with Zai about this Magic City night, this promotion happening with the Atlanta Hawks, the NBA team, my favorite NBA team. Shockingly, the story about my favorite NBA team was not, y'all didn't respond furiously to it. Kind of depressing because it like fully squashes any hope I ever had of like slowly transitioning this. Not slowly, but transitioning this into any sort of sports podcast. Not that I would do that to y'all, but if I just happened to talk about basketball and people really responded to that, I would happily talk about it more. But that's not what happened here. And I don't care, man, because you know what? Because y'all didn't... because y'all didn't rock the vote when it came to engaging with my content on the Atlanta Hawks Magic City night, the NBA done canceled it. It's your fault. Yes, if you did listen last week, we were talking about how awesome this Magic City promotion was going to be for the city of Atlanta. The NBA swooped in and canceled it. And I just wanted to give the closure. I'm not going to get into it too much, okay? I'm just mad at y'all now. I'm not getting into it too much, but the NBA canceled it. Super disappointing. I am hopefully still getting a hoodie. I've been told I'm still getting a hoodie, but now the shipping is like, we don't know where it is. They're not telling us about it. So now I'm really afraid the NBA is going to nix us getting our hoodies, which would make sense because, you know, they ultimately said they didn't want their brand. Not they didn't want their brand, but their quote unquote, the NBA's quote unquote partners were uncomfortable with it. What does that mean? Other people who have a lot of money, the other billionaires, or even the people who sponsor the league, such as the various gambling and alcohol organizations who funnel so much money into the league or have a what's when you're both, it's a mutually beneficial relationship, basically. The NBA has with all these other companies, and these other companies and these other owners were like, hey, F this. So it's gone and it's over, and I guess I'll never talk about it again. But I just wanted y'all to know, if you did last week, that all the joy we were expressing, it's not going to happen. We're never going to see it. Damn you. And it's, you listener, the listener listening now, fuck you, man. No, I'm sorry. That's very mean. I'm in my feelings about it. But we can move on to the main topic for the day. So, Jack Harlow. If you don't know, Jack Harlow is an American. Well, you can't just call him a hip hop artist or rapper anymore. He says he wants to be known as a rapper. We'll get into it. Jack Harlow, American musician, blew up around the 2020s, early pandemic, whatever, with a song called "What's Poppin'." He also went on to have other hits such as "First Class" and "Lovin' on You." He's on the Lil Nas X former number one song, "Industry Baby." So Jack Harlow definitely already he's a big figure in the discourse, the hip hop discourse community in the past 5 to 10 years, just as the de facto most popular new white rapper, and being as this is America, the internet is the way it is, and hip hop is the way it is. That has pretty constantly made him a target for both fair and unfair criticism and scrutiny around his engagement with this historically black art form. Jack Harlow, after a couple years, I don't remember how many years since the last album, 3 or 4 years since his last album, came out this past week with a new album called Monica. The new album is very R&B, think neo-soul, kind of jazzier, really soft vocals, really laid back, like classic Sunday kind of jazz, neo-soul-y. It's so I feel like mentioning any artist to compare it to is like fraught because people are going to be mad that you're comparing Jack Harlow. I've seen another outlet, maybe even Rolling Stone or like Vulture, called it voodoo inspired, and people were very upset that they compared Jack Harlow to D'Angelo, which is totally fair, but it is clearly in the lineage of songs or artists like D'Angelo and the album Voodoo in particular. A big surprise, this isn't a lane that he has been in before. Like I said, he primarily was like a more quote-unquote braggadocious, swag, modern, whatever, semi-lyrical, pretty lyrical, I guess, rapper. The interesting thing, so I'm going to use talking about Jack Harlow because before I get into my full thoughts about it, I'm going to talk about my experience being a black person. Because I'll ultimately want to talk about, like, a lot of what I talk about as a comedian are the things I find interesting and, like, funny, obviously, are the ways, in America we categorize and define black and white people. And as I'll get to, kind of in this analogous but almost what's that word for, like, opposite? It's like analogous but like also almost contradictory, inverse kind of way I relate to somewhat of the Jack Harlow experience, which again I said we'll get to. But this album arrived for me. I saw that it was coming out on Friday, and on Friday morning, I saw this new episode of the New York Times Popcast. This is a music podcast by the New York Times. I've actually listened to for like 3 or 4 years at this point. I think it's one of the better music podcasts. At this point, it's primarily interviews with other artists. They've had a bunch of artists who have had clips similar to this one go kind of viral because they are getting like a really interesting assortment of artists who are coming through to drop stuff. And obviously, when you're the New York Times, you can get the biggest artists. They had Bad Bunny on before he dropped DTMF. Rosalia was on. Erykah Badu's been on. Young Lean's been on. Big X The Plug's been on. Just a lot of people. Luke Combs was just on. They basically have all kinds of people. I said Big X The Plug already. Basically, anytime an artist is dropping an album now, I think it's one of the places that labels are like primarily sending to. I think part of the Clips rollout that began when Pusha T made comments, when Pusha T kind of explained his subliminal disses about Travis Scott initially, and that kind of went viral. That was also on the New York Times podcast. So basically, anytime a big artist is coming through or is about to drop a project and they want to get some quotables out there, this is where they head. I was going to say I do enjoy this podcast. Right now, it's in an iteration that's mostly just interviews. It's been a lot of other stuff, as kind of podcasts can be. A lot of times it was just the two hosts having conversations. There was a while where it was the main host just doing like different stories about different types of thing going on in the music world. And it's always been really in depth, and these are very experienced writers, and they are always able to, especially in interviews, get really interesting conversations out of their guests. So like I said, I saw Jack Harlow was on there, and he had a new album out. And on Friday, I was like, oh, I'd like to listen to this podcast, but I think I'll probably want to listen to this album first. And I was at work, and I can listen to music at work, and I saw the Jack Harlow album was only 30 minutes. So I was like, you give me an under 30-minute album from anyone, I'll probably give it a chance. That's a perfect length. So I checked it out. I had read that it was going to be R&B, but didn't really think too much about it. And then when it started, I definitely was very surprised by the direction it went. I didn't have a particular expectation of what a Jack Harlow R&B album would sound like, but I definitely, I guess in my mind, thought it would be much closer to the music he was making before, meaning it will probably have some singing and some, different kind of, songs that are more, centered around love and those kind of experiences. But I still expect there to be some rapping and some, more like synths and like modern sounds, things like that. So when it was very stripped back, it's stripped back instrumentally, it's stripped back vocally, and that is like clear from like the first couple of seconds of the album. Super surprising to me. I actually really enjoy the album. I've probably, like I said, it's only 30 minutes. So I've probably listened to it like 4 or 5 times already, just because it's really easy to get through and it's really nice on the ears. I think I don't know, a lot could be, excuse me, a lot could be said or felt about like the content of the songs or whatever. But in terms of like, does this sound good? Do I enjoy putting it on? Is it interesting? Does it feel like authentic and kind of go for it? Is it accomplishing the vibe that is it accomplishing the goal that it's clearly set out to accomplish? And I think it is. It's like the perfect, he described it in the interview as Sunday music. Listen to it today on Sunday. Can confirm, great Sunday music in your kitchen, making dinner, whatever. That's the album. I think it's great. And I listened to the interview afterwards, and I thought, as I typically do with the show, it was like a really interesting interview. If anything, because one of the hosts is like really consistently challenging Jack, because one thing Jack says about the album is he's like, I tried to write from a position that was like egoless. And, he's saying that in reference to the idea that hip hop as a genre is, very built on ego, bravado, machismo, all these things, masculinity and the varying ways it can look, but generally it looks like a kind of way. And he wanted to get away from writing like that, so he tried to, through his words, write an album where the writing had no ego in it. And one of the hosts is like kind of constantly, they wrestle with that idea throughout. And I always find it interesting when like you interview with someone and you're like, you're not just glazing them. You're like, hey, let me challenge you on your ideas. And I thought Jack interacted in a way that wasn't like crazy defensive. It was like, well, let's actually have a conversation about it. And so far you're probably like, yeah, this just sounds like an album rollout. What is to be had here, Creme? Well, it's not like, I don't know what kind of bubbles people are in on the internet. I know this was in my algorithm, my specific view into the internet. It was, at least for a day or two, like a big topic, a big talking point. I've seen a bunch of different Black artists and like the head of TDE even has like responded because at one point in the interview, Jack says the quote, "I got blacker," in reference to what his changing from like, typical braggadocio, whatever, swag white boy hip hop to a more traditionally, like soulful, jazzy type of R&B, which, does, we'll get into what is blacker or not black. So I guess the reason I wanted to use this, I thought this was interesting, way to jump into like a little exposition about myself, because like I said, the entire idea about like what is quote unquote black and what is quote unquote white is something I'm like, constantly fascinated by and constantly, trying to engage with. I guess for me, right, I grew up black. I am black. If you are listening to this podcast and, we're 15, 20 minutes in and you did not know, boom, gotcha. You got surprise black podcasted. You've already given me your stream. It's okay. This is just step one of the great replacement. Or step two. Step two's podcast. Step one was Steph Curry. Step two is slowly getting you all to like black podcast, and I'm just happy to be a part of it. But no, I'm black, but I grew up like. Let me pull back a little bit more. So I'm listening to the Grits and Eggs podcast with Deontay Kyle, a podcast I think me and Zai have talked about. Just one of the better new podcasts. I think it's like a year or two old, but it's only been on my radar for about a year. Deontay Kyle, the host, super awesome. It's a super pro-black, super radical podcast, and he had a guest on, and they were talking about, one of the guests was, I don't remember who the guest was, and I'm sorry to that guest, but they were basically having a conversation about how black people just the way black people talk is so much cooler and so much more interesting. And what they used was, like, at one point the guest ran down he ran down all the different ways historically, like just in hip hop alone, that niggas have come up with to say the word gun, just like Blicky, Ruger, Nine, Draco, think of the next 20. I'm not going to. But, they're able to get to literally close to 20. And I'm like, yeah, I actually recognize all of those as different ways people have said gun using just hip hop. And so that really inspired me to write a joke about basically the idea that, white people, just that black people talk much cooler, but putting it through my own lens. And, I'm not going to spoil too much of the joke, but I use like a similar mechanism and naming all the different ways black people have to say something is cool, and then blah, 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 blah. And so I did that joke, and I wrote that joke, and I was like, cool. It started working, and I was like, cool. But then, as one thing I do, it's like helps me build my material as a comedian. As soon as a joke works, I'm like, okay, how do I fit this into my ultimately like my personal narrative about myself? Because like comedically, there's some people that are doing purely like observational, political stuff out in the world. Boom, that's where their comedy is rooted. For me, I definitely do some of that, but I think a lot of my comedy is rooted in personal experience and personal narrative, and writing this joke about how black and white people talk. The natural, like leading into that, I'm like, okay, so what is my relationship with that, right? And my relationship with that is like, being told for a lot of my life, like, oh, you're so articulate, you're so well-spoken, or ultimately, like, I talk like a white person. Again, if you didn't know, for the first 15 minutes, I was black. Gotcha. My middle school bullies were right. So, yeah, I just was like, okay, what's the most I could extrapolate out of that, like that feeling, right? And it got me to, so vulnerable. Basically, the idea that like I'm a black person, well established at this point, but I generally do feel insecure about the way other black people perceive me. Not like so much that like I walk around and I'm like you know what I mean? This is the thing I'm like know about myself and have worked through in therapy for some years, and like am comfortable enough to like write about and tell people about. So I'm okay. But that's my experience, and a big part of that experience or the big reason for that experience is growing up. I went from kindergarten to 7th grade, and then from like 9th grade or 10th grade to 12th grade, I went to the same small, predominantly white private school. And so most of my friends and teachers and a lot of the education, ultimately a big chunk of my community growing up was white. Therefore, I'm culturally, I say, and there's a lot of, I say in the joke, but one thing I say is like, I am culturally white. Not that I don't identify with like black people and black stuff. It's just I bring a very, have you guys seen The Office energy to the cookout? Ha ha ha. And I guess like, I was trying to figure out how to frame my experience growing up to like help people understand what it was like for me growing up in a predominantly white environment. So I have like I have a narrative, or a story rather, from each elementary, middle school, and high school that I think is illustrative of my experience. Okay, so elementary school, for the most part, I am the only black kid in my grade. Not for the most part. There's one black boy and one black girl in my grade. I'm not going to say her name. already mentioned her in a different story. Maybe I'll circle back to it. But hope she's all right. There was another girl in my grade. It was just me and her for like the first 2 or 3 kindergarten through second or third grade. Third grade comes around. We get another black kid in my grade named Amir. They put Amir and me in the same class. Looking back, I don't know if that was a good move or a bad. I think it was a good move because I think they were like, we got to keep them together. But they didn't. They gave us to the worst teacher to give to two, right? Like they're like, okay, we have two black boys. We definitely want to keep them together, and let's give them the youngest, most socially conscious teacher. They're like, no, 2 black boys. Let's keep them together. Who's the oldest white lady we have here? Put her in charge of them, and that's what happened. And me and Amir are homies. Me and Amir are still. I mean, we're not still tight, but we still keep in touch. But the story is like, so this is like, I didn't realize this was a crazy thing until this is like a story I like told a friend at like the age of 24, and they're like, this is nuts. And I was like, I guess it is weird. So obviously me and Amir are in the same class, like I said, and every day, so the teacher, Mrs. King, bless her heart, I don't know if she's still alive. I'm not gonna say I don't care. She was nice. The story is weird, but she's nice. Generally, you see, this is my internalized whatever. R.I.P. potentially her. So she never got our names right? Like me and Amir, the only 2 black kids, every day. She never called us the right name. She called me Amir a lot. She called Amir my government name a lot, and I don't remember it affecting either of us, but it like clearly looking back on it affected her, because eventually what I remember is like one day we came into class and she like called us the wrong name, and like she called me the wrong name and I corrected her, and she just like threw me a piece of candy. And that was just like her strategy. For the rest of the time she taught us. There was never an explanation of the bucket. She never was like, hey, listen, I'm gonna do some microaggressions. Here's an apology, Twix. There was never that. It was never, like, I think she said sorry. I don't know for sure. In my head, she said sorry, but the candy definitely communicated sorry either way. And yeah, again, that's not a thing I ever thought about being weird until I told someone. And then like looking at it now through an adult lens, it's like, it's really, it is dehumanizing, might be a little too extreme, but it's definitely like, no, I think dehumanizing is the right word, because there's never really like an acknowledgement of our actual humanity. And there was like, an effort to make us comfortable with being called out of our name. And with a candy, it's almost like even like a way to like highlight it. I don't know. It wasn't right. It wasn't right. So that was like my elementary school experience. And there was a lot of like, they've done this study. I don't remember. It's like a study in like some kind of video. But basically, you know how like if they did this some sort of scientific thing that proved that like a teacher will just be looking at a black child more, so like a black child will get more. People who know what I'm talking about know the study I'm referencing. But if you're black, you basically get looked at more, and definitely that was my experience. I felt kind of constantly picked on by my teachers, and like I was a chill kid. I wasn't a chill kid. I was like a kid. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't any different in terms of like temperament or behavior than any of my peers for the most part. But I do remember like almost every year being like, why am I getting in trouble so much? Like, like I feel like I'm just chilling, but I am constantly in the principal's office for just the same shit my friends are doing, and they're not here. And then what is the story? Oh, in middle school, right? So like I think the first story illustrates like the like subtlety of like racism and being, you know, kind of the fly in the milk, the proverbial fly in the milk. In middle school it was crazy because like, you know, I whenever it like comes out and someone was like racist as like a teenager or like a middle schooler or like said racist things online as like a teenager, I always don't care. And I'm not saying you shouldn't or nobody should, but I guess my middle school experience made me just so it just normalized the idea that those age kids are just like terrible and racist, just like to everyone. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. That was just my experience. There was one day I was I was in study hall and a kid named I'll name him Chris Harvey just called me a nigger. Just called me that like pretty loudly. The teacher heard him. He got one detention. He was like, she's like, you gotta go to detention. Otherwise, chill out. For what I think is a little bit more serious of an offense. You ask me, someone calls another kid a hard R, he can't come to school tomorrow. Anyway, they gave him one detention. Later in the same day, I am just like talking in class to another, like I'm talking to another person in class while the teacher's talking, but wouldn't you know, teacher just calls on me. Boom, I'm in trouble. I have detention that day. I get to detention that afternoon. Who do you know is there? Boom, Chris Harvey. And we just hang out at detention. To his credit, I don't think he said it again during our entire hour together. Yeah, that I don't. That's like, I think the craziest part of that is like how normalized that was for me. I think that's like, looking back on it, I wasn't even that pressed, and I remember no one being that pressed. And I was like, oh yeah, you know, people are just wild. You know, I won't act like I, as someone that age, wasn't doing and saying things that were deplorable, either for attention or to be edgy. So that's why I'm like, there's definitely no defense I have for it. I'm not I'm not like, it was fine. That's a crazy thing to do. And but for him to not be punished more severely than that is like kind of a tacit approval of it, frankly. Cause like, you know, me as someone who got one detention for talking in class, I'm clearly going to talk in class again. Like, you know what I mean? You haven't given me a punishment large enough to deter me from it. So I feel, did he probably call me again? Sure, but he never got caught. So yeah, that's kind of an idea of like the racism I dealt with as a middle schooler, and then like in high school, there was this girl, and one day during like art class, I think, there was a song, you probably know it, "Swimming Pools" by Kendrick Lamar. It's a very popular song. My senior year of high school, there's a line in it that goes, I got a swimming pool full of liquor, I'm gonna dive in it. I listen to that song. That song is playing. That song finishes playing. My white female friend looks over to me and she's like, "Can I tell you something?" I'm like, "Sure." She's like, "The first time I heard that song, I thought it was, I got a pool full of niggas and they drown in it." And I was just like, oh. Because, like, that's the thing. It's like by the time I'm older, by the time this is like senior of high school, I've already had like, I will go back in a minute, but like there was like a long cycle for me where there was like, not a long cycle, a period. I've done the work now to like look back and be like, there was a period in my life where there was like a self-hating black person in me, or like a part of me that was ashamed of myself, or like earnestly wanted to be white, because I went through all these experiences that like made me feel other, or I was getting called racial slurs. Yeah, to the point where like I don't know. There was, when I say that I'm going to go back in ninth grade before the senior year, that's like the time I think of where I was like the most ashamed, because I'd gone to like small private schools my whole life, and then I got into small private schools where I was like generally not the only white person, not the only black person, but like one of the only black people for a while. And like as we got higher in grade and the school got bigger, obviously like more black people came. A lot of them were not black people that had gone to private school their whole life. And also throughout this experience of being around like mostly white people, I still have my like family and my like church. So there's still, a couple opportunities a month or one a week, opportunities or situations where like I'm actually around a lot of black people. And the older I get, the like more I feel like less accepted by them and like more different from them. And that's definitely a point that like peaked in like I guess in my freshman year of high school, when I stopped going to the private school and for 1 year went to like a public high school. And I remember like the first day of walking into high school and like walking into the bathroom immediately and crying, because I didn't have the ability to articulate or even like understand my feelings at that point. But like I was going from being in a grade of like 40 people to like a grade of like a couple hundred. And I went from like no diversity to like full spectrum of diversity, different people who knew each other, just an instrumentally difficult social situation for me that I like recognized instantly. And like my response to that was to like really glam on to like just like being trying to be a white person. As crazy as that sounds, this was like I've had a lot of different eras. This is my most shameful era. But so like I had like 2 or 3 friends, and they all were on the lacrosse team, and obviously white dudes, 2 of them named Jackson. Still love those guys. Hey, Jacksons. And yeah, I just pretended to be on the lacrosse team. I like wore lacrosse pennies and like different lacrosse gear and shirts and like team stuff to school every day, despite not being on the team and not playing. I just like I was so out of sorts socially and like unable to know who I am or like where I fit, that I just like tried my best to fit into the one thing where like I had any familiarity. And that was a really weird era. So all that to say, my senior year, I was past that, but still, I don't know, because it was definitely like still 10 years. Because like, if I'm being honest, it took until like my mid-20s for me to really feel like a sense of like security and like confidence in myself as like a person and who I am as an individual. Thinking of like race included or otherwise. And that's when I really started to like have black friends. And like, ironically enough, it was during Portland, but when the Black Lives Matter protests started, and me and all the other like black artists across town kind of like formed up and made community, that's when I was like, oh, there is a version of me that is that is like authentically me, and like I feel comfortable with, and like I don't have to worry if like black people find me to be too quote unquote white, because like I guess what I haven't even had is like I got called an Oreo a lot, which is I think probably high school stage was like acceptance. Late high school is like acceptance of being an Oreo, which is not a place I'm at anymore. But Oreo is like the idea is you're black on the outside and you're white on the inside. And the joke I'm doing about it, I'm like, I actually felt like a black person inside a white person inside a black person. I there's more exposition that needs to happen for that to make sense, but ultimately, because like I don't know, even I'm losing my train of thought. The white parts or the black parts about me, Oreo. Anyways, have I done a good job of explaining everything? I kind of just cut off the Oreo point because I don't remember where that was landing. Is the thing I got called. I guess that's like a root of where a lot of my insecurity comes from too. Getting called things like that. It's like obviously you speak so well, you articulate, and you talk like a white person's. Those are like, dog whistles and like, this weird anti-black compliment. And that never really, because like, at many points in my life, I wasn't like aware enough to like understand how shitty of a thing that is to say. So I think for a while in my life, it was just like a thing that I just took earnestly, which is crazy. And yeah, excuse me, just the idea that because we're going to tie it back to Jack Harlow now. I was like, why am I even talking about this? I remembered. So I understand. So the quote, did I give the quote already? The quote he had was about him getting blacker. He said, in regards to his music, the question, it's actually funny because the interviewers, and we're back on the Jack Harlow thing. I'm sorry. I hope this was easy to follow. But the interviewers were actually asking him specifically about the idea of being a white artist and being a white artist who is in the space of hip hop, and how historically you could talk about obviously Post Malone, Machine Gun Kelly, Miley Cyrus, Jelly Roll, probably the Mount Rushmore of people who've done this. They talked about how he was in hip hop, and as a white artist in that space, there's almost at this point an expectation that eventually a pivot back to being a white person will come, and how what he's done is kind of antithetical to that idea. And they're asking him a question about that, and they basically present like that idea to him that, a lot of people would have expected him to shift into a genre or a sound or a persona that is more appealing or accessible to white audiences, and is more quote unquote traditionally white. Thinking about Post Malone doing country, Miley doing everything else she did, and Jelly Roll doing Jelly Roll stuff, etc. And he as the person was like, yeah, and the interviewer was like, yeah, instead of doing that, he said, yeah, I got blacker. And I remember, and this is a line people's feathers are ruffled about this line. And listening to the interview initially, it's not something I even registered as odd, because, in the context of the actual question that's being asked, they're like very clearly trying to do their best to be aware of and respectful of the fact that his music is in the lineage of a black art form, and his music is indebted to black people, and his current project was even further indebted to black people, even more in a lineage of historically black music when it pertains to like soul and jazz. So it was well understood to me that what he meant was he was intentionally going opposite of the way people expected him to go, in that he was not explicitly catering to a more traditionally white sound or whatever the expectation of white people music is, quote unquote. And like I said, it didn't read odd to me at first, or I didn't even notice it. And then when people started like, it got the quote, quote unquote, I got blacker, that itself has been thrown onto, YouTube, TMZ style news graphics that are meant to engagement farm. It's the perfect line if you want to engagement farm about Jack Harlow. That's the thing. He, like I said, at first, I didn't think anything of it because it's in a perfectly reasonable conversation. And but once you copy and paste it and put it onto just, a picture of your face, like next to a picture of your face where it just is you saying, I got blacker, obviously that's going to look crazy. And then so I went back and watched the clip of that part of the conversation again. And the crazy thing is, and someone pointed it out in the comments, it's so hard optically because it is three white dudes having a conversation about, like, especially in this moment, explicitly black music and like what is like the best way to be respectful to and pay homage to black art. And it's three white guys pontificating about it. And so the optics already aren't great. And I gotta say, if you're gonna be the New York Times music podcast, or just like I said, I love this show a lot and I love both these journalists a lot. I've read one of their books. I've actually talked to one of them through like DMs about stuff a couple times. They're really knowledgeable. They're really cool guys. They have shitty opinions on Brat, but besides that, they're cool. But if you're gonna be like, the New York Times, a quote unquote progressive, a quote unquote worldly, a quote unquote, like, I don't want to say woke, but the other side would say woke. You're going to be that kind of institution, and then you're going to have two people be critics on an art form as like vast and varied as music, and you're just like, here's a couple white guys. You're going to get in a lot of moments where optics are not great because it's 2026 and you chose to have both your main music people be two white guys. Again, I think they're great at the job, and I think I like them, but you can't say that's not bad, weird optics. And did I have a problem with the quote when it happened? No. Do I have a problem with the quote now? And this is where we'll tie in both my very long personal exposition and this Jack Harlow story. I clearly relate to the idea of being, because with Jack, that's why I said he's kind of like not the opposite of me, but like I am black person that grew up around a lot of white people, so has a lot of like culturally white things that like I am just like naturally really into, and scare quotes around culturally white and like scare quotes around grow up black, like all of that for sure. And then on the other side, Jack Harlow and like a lot of these quote unquote swag white boys, a thing only I say, but a lot of these swag white boys are like white but grew up indebted, like appreciating primarily black art. And it's funny because in the conversation they talk about like the idea that like black artists, hip hop artists in particular, don't have as much like latitude or don't get as much like coverage or press or like serious consideration when they go into when they try to explore different genres in the same way that white artists do when they try to explore different genres. And while that is true, I don't know. I also I feel like there I don't want to say that like no rapper has ever done a good rock project, but like in terms of like the most popular rappers, have any of them done a good rock project? There's like, I love Jay-Z and Linkin Park's Collision Course, and there's certainly other good moments of hip hop and rock crossing over, and it's not just rock music. Black people, hip hop artists, tried to do a lot of other stuff. My whole point being like, I don't know. This is why it's interesting to me, right? Because I understand. I would never say I got whiter. Y'all, I would never say I got whiter. But I understand the uncomfortability around not knowing like how to like the things you really like without it seeming like it's in some way corny, or you're liking it to be cool or fit in, or you're trying to be some sort of vulture. I'm not saying that Jack Harlow is totally innocent or guilty of all of these things. I'm just saying I come at it from the perspective of like it's a big what was he supposed to do moment. Obviously, I wouldn't have said I got blacker if I was him, but within the context of the conversation, it makes a lot of sense. And I don't know. Did I? I'm afraid of being called a coon again, y'all. I got called a coon. When I did the Koreans with the new black people thing, I've been called a coon a lot. So it's very it's very. I don't want to defend Jack Harlow. That's what I'm trying to get across here. But unfortunately, I do think it's interesting that more than anything that there was this conversation that they were having about like how to properly be a white person trying to fit into black music in general, and just having that conversation kind of sparked this backlash and this kind of distancing by certain parts of the black community. This, I don't know, it felt like black people being like, no, which is totally fair, but it's just funny in the context of the conversation where it was very effortful on both the parts of the interviewers and the interviewee to try and be respectful and reverential and call out the thing that they ultimately kind of got called out for. I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know if I fully landed the plane tying my personal exposition and Jack Harlow together, but I had to get the personal exposition off because I've been it's been cooking in my brain for the past week. It took me like 3 days to write this long joke. Hopefully you'll see it one day. It's got, at some point I call myself a racially confused Russian doll. There's Oreo stuff in there. There's stuff about the cookout. I kind of hashed. Did I? Yeah. It's so hard. It's when you're doing this solo and there's no one here to be like, I guess even if there was someone here, this is all my thoughts. So I couldn't be like, hey, did I say all my thoughts? They'd be like, I don't know. You tell me, listener, did I say all my thoughts on this? I don't know. But it says I'm like 50 minutes in, and I'm like, really? 50 minutes in? I got bad news for you guys. We're not gonna cut the Disney Mount Rushmore. We might cut the Disney Mount Rushmore. I want to cut the Disney Mount Rushmore, but we're not gonna do it. Okay, give me a second. Okay, this season of Love is Blind, season 10 is over. It's been, I was going to say a decade, but they do 2 a year. So it's been 5 years, 10 seasons of Love is Blind, 50 50-ish couples. IDK. These are I'm just gonna do closing thoughts on the season. I finally watched the reunion. I think everyone who cares to probably has by now. It's hard to know how people feel about this show because people have every opinion online. I've seen a lot of people, especially this season, talking about how they don't watch the show anymore and then proceeding to talk about the show. So I don't really know where people are at. I personally, based on this season, I think the show is still doing a great job. I really, I'm not gonna act like this was the best season ever, but it's like a quality season. I liked it a lot. At this point, we know the experiment bullshit. Love is not blind. They have failed. The ship has sailed. We have the data on that. Some people are like, so I know, so I don't want to watch anymore. I'm like, I am not watching being like, I wonder if the people are gonna work out. They're not. I know that. I watch the show for mess. I watch the show for people being put in unprecedentedly insane emotional situations where they have to decide if they want to marry someone for the rest of their life on a whim in front of their entire family on TV. Is it healthy for society? Would it happen in a just world? No. But here we are. So if you're in there for mess, if you're in there for being like, damn, this dude's a psycho. If you're in there for being like, man, I don't know what's going on with Shorty. She's nice, but something ain't right about her. This is the show for you. Chris, I'll get to Chris. Chris, one of the best assholes of all time on the show. One of the best. The episode where he was where they were at the not reunion, but they were at like the party, like the whatever party they had. One of the best episodes of the show ever. It was on the level with the jet skis or the Megan Fox stuff. It's all time. The flying fuck. That's so. Someone who likes watching a show where I know most of the people are going to be terrible. I know most of the relationships will fail. I know the producers are bad people. From that lens, great show. Really no notes on the season. Just a quick rundown of all the couples. A last word. Alex and Ashley, you both suck. Ashley, of course, did the whole leaving him at the altar thing. It's much less cool when you realize like they both talked about how they weren't gonna do it, and she was like, "I'll surprise you by calling you weird." Like everyone's making fun of Alex, and that's totally fair. He is weird. I think he might be on the spectrum, but that's a different podcast. He is weird, no doubt. I still everyone's talking about how the dude's a liar, and he's just like, hey, please tell me where I lied. And she's like, you know where you lied. You are unclear about the timeline. Like, if all this is predicated on him being dishonest and a liar, and you still have a very hard time, like you can't elevator pitch me on how he lied, but he's a liar, then I'm like, I don't understand how he's a liar still. I know the timeline stuff he says is weird, but every time they try and press him on it, he's like, I'll pull it up right now. Like, what are your questions? So I'm like, he seems about the action. So, yeah, they were never gonna work. And they both seem like they peaked in high school. So, I hope you both enjoy your moment in the sun. Chris and Jessica, I've already said, Chris, all time bad guy. All time bad guy. I know when I'm watching the show that I know I'm locked in the show when someone's being such a dick on stage or on screen that I consciously am like, I have to find their social media and send them a mean DM. And Chris was the first one this season where I'm like, I gotta send this guy a mean DM right now. But I did. I don't anymore. There was a time in my life where people on reality TV would tweak, and I'd be like, "Nah, I gotta tell you. I gotta try and tell you to your face. You're tweaking." He inspired that out of me. Jess, she seems like a great girl. I think ultimately this whole experience is probably gonna be a good thing for her life. She seems to have found a man. All that. No notes, Chris. You're an asshole, but you help make the season great. Connor and Bree, just kind of boring. I thought Bree sucked, but her and Connor seem to be in love. And if she's cool with Connor, she's cool with me. Connor seems like a cool dude. Connor seems nice. No more deep thoughts. Devontae, and Brittany. I saw someone online call Devontae Patrick Mahomes. I haven't thought about anything else since I've seen that. They both he already got another girl pregnant, which is crazy. And it's not equal weight. He is definitely more of a douche than she was nuts, but it can't be ignored. I think I've seen some women defending the whole having a wedding, like buying a wedding dress before, and I get that. And maybe he knew that before. He knew that in the pod, so like it shouldn't have been a big thing to him. I would also find that to be a bit much. It's clear he was stringing her along. I don't know. They were weird. I don't really have a lot of deep thoughts on Patrick Mahomes and Brittany. I hope they both find counseling. Vic and Christine, y'all are cool. Y'all are hot. Y'all are fun. I wish you could be my parents. Mike and Emma, yeah, I don't really care overall. I can't believe y'all got as far as you did when everyone who watched the show knew what the issue would be from day one, and it was the issue. Wow, I can't believe it. I think both of you really wanted to be on TV, and that's fine. I think everyone does, so like that's fine. Jordan and Amber, wow, this was at the reunion. This was riveting stuff. This is when you watch a reality show reunion, you hope one of the broads storms off stage in a huff, and you hope one of the dudes is like, "You were wasted, and you were mean to me." Like every time, like people, they broke up, and I totally see it on both sides, right? I don't think either of them is necessarily a bad person. I think they probably both shouldn't have got married. I think you shouldn't, anyone with a kid on this show, tweaking, if you ask me. But it kind of seemed, at first I was like, I kind of was sympathetic to Amber being like, Jordan, it seems like more of an effort could have been made. But once he said she was like yelling at him and stuff, I was like, I get it, bro. Because it made me realize like a shorty could yell at me one time and like we could be together for 10 years and it's loving and all that. But as soon as you like, not to say like, you can never raise your voice or be emotionally expressive, but like if you were screaming at me and like being mean, you get one of those. You get one time. I'm not saying there's not some people who could rock with it. That's just not me. I'm fragile. I would cry. I would never believe you loved me again. Like I need constant positive affirmation, even when things are going great, right? So if you yelled at me, there's not enough time left in my life for you to dig us out of the crater we would be in terms of me being comfortable as a couple, right? Okay. And to get out of here, Raven Simone. I think Raven Simone uses they them pronouns, so I'm gonna they them, but I'm not sure. Raven Simone recently gave their Mount Rushmore of Disney Channel stars. People are in a huff about it. Not in a huff. People are talking about it online because Miley Cyrus, Hannah Montana, Miley Cyrus of Hannah Montana fame was not included. What did I do with my hair just now? Was not included in Raven Simone's their Mount Rushmore. Shia LaBeouf, Hilary Duff. Everything about the fact that those rhyme, something there. Raven and Jet Jackson. I wasn't familiar with Jet Jackson. Jet Jackson is before my time. Even Stevens was a little. Hilary Duff, even Stevens, they were both kind of before my time. Hilary Duff was still on. Lizzie McGuire was still on when I was a kid, but it was a little too mature for me when I started. So my Mount Rushmore, and to give you an idea, I mean, I think that does that. Like, I am like right at the tail. I'm like That's So Raven was like when I started watching, and like Phineas and Ferb is like when I stopped watching. That's the rough timeline of my Disney viewership. So within that, my Mount Rushmore of Disney Channel original stars are obviously starting with Miley, Hannah Montana. Hannah Montana. I got Miley. I got White. Wow, this is a double Miley Cyrus episode because I talked about her in the Culture Vulture section. So what a legacy. But I don't know, for me, Hannah Montana, or for me, my generation, my era, Hannah Montana, Miley is the biggest star out of all these people, right? Like that alone should kind of tell you what it was. Like, I don't think any other show mentioned even Stevens or Lizzie McGuire. Certainly not That's So Raven or Phineas and Ferb. I don't think any of those shows is as big as Hannah Montana. I don't think just the sheer triple threat, the singing and dancing of it all, the music banged, the movie banged, See You Again, Nobody's perfect, I gotta work it, again and again till I get it right. Everybody makes mistakes. Yeah, that's a deep bag. So Miley's on there for me. Who is? Oh, okay, cool. It's Miley. Number 2, I'm throwing Zac Efron. I think High School Musical. In a similar way to Miley, it's like he had it's the triple threat of it all. Interestingly enough, Zac Efron, actually not the voice of Troy Bolton, the singing voice of Troy Bolton in the first movie, but just like, I guess I might be looking at it from a too much of a star-centric standpoint, because to me, obviously, after Miley, Zac Efron's the next biggest star. Definitely bigger than Shia. Jesus Christ, Shia. That's another... That's another episode. Yeah, in High School Musical, to me, that was the biggest thing that ever happened on Disney Channel at that era. I loved it. Multiple movies, obviously no TV show, but I'm still putting Zac Efron up there. To me, he drove those movies. Everyone else was great. The ensemble cast was great, but those are Zac Efron movies before anything else. Number 3 on the Mount Rushmore is Hilary Duff. I was a little, like I said, late on Lizzie McGuire. It was a little mature for me when I first started, but I think the legacy is undeniable. Hilary Duff is still a smoke show that has to be factored in. Yeah, and I just felt like her, and she's probably like 1A, 1B with Shia. Her and Shia could probably share a space ultimately. But yeah, that clearly was like the backbone of that network for a second. And then last but not least is Raven Simone. Raven, the underrated thing I thought about Raven, looking back on this, is Raven was a voice on The Proud Family and The Cosby Show. But also Raven was a part of the Cheetah Girls. So just like with Miley and Zach, there's also the music we got from Raven, and being in multiple movies. I think there's 2 different That's So Raven spinoffs, including like that Corey in the House, whatever more recent Raven thing they did. Raven, the high school I went to, wow, double tie in the high school I went to where I told you I cried, same high school That's So Raven went to. What a beautiful way to end this episode, man. It all ties together. Honorable mentions are going to go to the Zach and Cody twins, the Dylan and Colt, the Sprouse twins, and Phineas and Ferb. Phineas and Ferb, oh my God. If we want to talk about music, Phineas and Ferb might have had the best catalog of anyone I've mentioned, Miley included, man. Bow Wow Wow. bow chicka bow wow. That's what my baby said. Mow, 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 and my heart starts bumping. Chicka, chicka, choo, wow. Thank you for listening. Every end of every solo podcast, I'm like, man, I hope that wasn't terrible. Because I have no time to do any self-reflection. Everything I say, I'm just like, I'll think about that again and tomorrow when I listen to this. So, please subscribe, all the things I asked at the top of the episode. Follow me on socials at creme2d. Reply to me with what your Mount Rushmore is. What else did we talk about? Tell me what you think of the Jack Harlow album. I do think the album's good. Call me a coon. I dare you. I don't give a flying fuck. I'm tying in everything, okay? Baby, one of the notes I have just here just says reverse Jack Harlow. And I guess I was talking about me. So, y'all have a good night. Bye.